In today's narration about Abdullah and Neville Goddard, we're going to uncover the forgotten teachings of Neville's mysterious mentor, truth that will transform how you see manifestation forever. Abdullah's lessons shaped Neville Goddard's understanding of the law of assumption, and today you'll experience that same awakening for yourself. So, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And stay until the end, because this journey into the mystery of Abdullah and Neville Goddard will change how you see your own power. There is a name that seems to move like a ghost through the pages of history. A name often spoken in hushed tones by those who study the mysteries of creation and manifestation. Abdullah. To some, he is little more than a shadowy figure, a teacher mentioned fleetingly by Neville Goddard in his lectures. To others, he is a near mythical being, a spiritual giant whose wisdom changed the lives of those few who walked close enough to feel the fire of his presence. And yet, when one begins to trace his life, the trails often vanish into mist. Who was this man? Why is his name so rarely known? And why, even decades later, does the mention of Abdullah stir something deep within the hearts of those seeking to understand the deeper laws of reality? We begin with mystery because that is how Abdullah first enters Neville's story. There are no long biographies, no meticulously kept journals, no glossy photos for us to analyze. There are only fragments, words Neville dropped in his lectures like breadcrumbs for the spiritually hungry to follow. My old teacher Abdullah, Neville would say, almost casually, as if mentioning the sun rising that morning. Abdullah told me to live as though it were already so, he would remind his audience, his voice echoing with the authority of a man who knew the truth he spoke. And yet, beyond these phrases, Abdullah remained largely unknown. He was not a man of fame, nor of worldly ambition. He lived his life as one already anchored in the unseen, a master of the imaginal world, indifferent to recognition. But what we do know is that Abdullah played a crucial role in shaping Neville Goddard's understanding of the law, the profound principle that imagination creates reality. When Neville spoke of Abdullah, he spoke with the deep reverence of a student who had been shown a path that forever altered his existence. It was Abdullah who challenged Neville to truly live in the end, not as a vague hope, but as a reality so vivid it could not be denied. It was Abdullah who tore from Neville the excuses, the rationalizations, the comfortable habits of doubt, and taught him to stand boldly in the unseen until the unseen became seen. Neville often recounted one pivotal story that revealed the uncompromising nature of Abdullah's teaching. He was living in New York at the time and desired to spend Christmas with his family in Barbados. But he had no money for a ticket, no visible means of travel. When he shared his predicament with Abdullah, his teacher did not flinch. He simply said, "You are in Barbados. You went first class. You are there now." Neville, stunned, began to explain the impossibility of the situation. Abdullah cut him off sharply. "You are in Barbados. You went first class. Do not speak to me as though you were not there." He slammed the door. To Abdullah, the imaginal act was done. The matter was settled. This was not merely positive thinking. Abdullah was not interested in comforting lies. He was teaching Neville the absolute nature of the law. If you dare to occupy the state of the wish fulfilled, completely unflinchingly, the external world must mirror that internal state. It is law. It is not negotiable. Abdullah knew this. He lived it. And in time, Neville experienced it for himself. Just as Abdullah declared, he received a first-class ticket to Barbados, even though by the logic of the world it was impossible. That one lesson forever shaped Neville's understanding of manifestation. But who was Abdullah before Neville's recollections brought his name to light? This is where the mystery deepens. Many theories swirl online attempting to define him. Some claim he was Ethiopian. Others say he was Jewish. Still others imagine he was a mystic with ties to secret orders. The truth is, we do not know the full details, and perhaps that is as it should be. Abdullah never sought to be a figure of worship or fascination. His life was not designed to satisfy our curiosity, but to awaken our own consciousness. In the fragments Neville shared, we find a man who dressed in flowing robes, carried himself with authority, and spoke with the certainty of one who had touched the divine. He was steeped in ancient knowledge, yet utterly practical in applying it. He was bold, uncompromising, and uninterested in appeasing the smallness of the human ego. It is easy in our age to romanticize such a figure, to imagine him as a flawless saint. But the power of Abdullah's legacy lies not in myth-making. It lies in the teachings he imparted and the transformation he inspired. He was not some distant, unreachable guru perched on a pedestal. He was a man who lived what he taught. He demanded that his students do the same. He would not indulge Neville's fears or entertain his excuses. When Neville came to him with a consciousness of lack, Abdullah did not coddle him. He declared the truth. He insisted Neville live in the state of already having. And when Neville wavered, Abdullah did not soften. He reminded him again and again, "You are already there." Abdullah's teachings carried the same unshakable certainty as the law itself. He understood that the universe responds not to pleading or desperation, but to the conviction of fulfilled desire. He knew that our inner conversations shape our outer world. He knew that the end, once fully accepted, reshapes the journey. And so he lived in that end with an intensity that forced his students to confront their own unbelief. His presence alone was enough to disturb the sleep of those around him, to shake them from the trance of victimhood and awaken them to their creative power. Yet Abdullah was not merely a stern taskmaster. Beneath his uncompromising nature was a profound compassion. He knew that the greatest gift he could give another was not sympathy for their limitations, but the vision of their true potential. When Neville spoke of him, there was always a sense of deep gratitude, as though Abdullah had opened a door he never knew existed. That door led inward, to the place where all creation begins. Why then is Abdullah so often reduced to a whisper in Neville's story? Perhaps because he himself never sought to be known. He was not interested in building a following or leaving behind a legacy. His mission was not to be remembered, but to awaken. He planted seeds in Neville's consciousness, knowing they would bear fruit in the lives of countless others. He stood in the background, unseen by most, content to be the invisible root that nourished a mighty tree.
And so we must ask, does it matter that we do not have all the facts about Abdullah's life? Does it matter that we cannot trace every detail of his lineage, his travels, his studies? Or does the very mystery surrounding him serve as a lesson? For the essence of Abdullah is not found in his biography. It is found in the power of the law he lived and embodied. He exists not as an idol to be worshipped, but as a reminder that we too can step into that same authority. Abdullah's story, fragmented as it is, invites us into our own. It challenges us to look beyond the surface of appearances and to claim the invisible reality we desire. It asks us to stop waiting for permission, to stop explaining why our dreams cannot happen, and to live as though they already have. This is not a comfortable path. It demands the death of the old self, the one addicted to doubt and fear. It demands that we walk by faith, not by sight. But if we dare, we will discover what Neville discovered under Abdullah's guidance, that our imagination is not a passive daydream, but the creative force of God within us. And so, the name Abdullah becomes more than just a historical curiosity. It becomes a symbol of the law in action. It becomes a call to awaken from the sleep of limitation. It becomes an invitation to live as though the unseen were already seen, because in truth, it is. Abdullah's presence in Neville's life was more than a teacher imparting lessons. It was as if a door had opened to another dimension of understanding. Imagine being in the company of someone who seemed to walk with absolute authority over reality, who spoke as though the unseen world was more tangible than the one you could touch. This was the energy Abdullah carried. He was not merely teaching concepts, he was demonstrating a way of life. Those who truly grasp his teachings realize that Abdullah was not presenting a new idea. He was revealing an eternal principle. Live in the end, he would tell Neville. Those 4 words contain the entire secret of creation. Living in the end means you inhabit the state of your fulfilled desire so completely, so consistently, that it becomes your natural dwelling place. You do not merely hope for your dream, you assume it. You let it permeate your thoughts, your inner conversations, your reactions. You see the world through the lens of already having what you seek, and in time, the outer world must conform to that inner reality. Neville often admitted that this was not easy for him at first. He had been conditioned, as most of us are, to believe only what his senses could confirm. If he lacked the money, he believed he was poor. If the opportunity had not yet arrived, he believed he was stuck. Abdullah shattered that conditioning. He would not entertain Neville's protests, his logical explanations for why something could not happen. To Abdullah, the outer world was a mirror, and to argue with the mirror was futile. The true work was to change the image in consciousness. If you are in Barbados, Abdullah said, you cannot be in New York. He forced Neville to dwell in the reality of already being where he desired to be. This kind of instruction is uncomfortable for the human ego, because it removes every excuse. You can no longer blame the world, circumstances, or other people. You are forced to take full responsibility for your inner state, and yet that responsibility is the doorway to freedom. Abdullah knew this. He knew that the moment a person fully accepts that their imagination shapes their reality, they are no longer at the mercy of the world. They become the cause, not the effect. Abdullah was also deeply rooted in the Scriptures, but not in the way most people imagine. He read the Bible not as history, but as a psychological drama playing out within the individual. He taught Neville to see every character, every story, as symbolic of states of consciousness. When you read of Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt, you are reading of your own journey out of limitation into freedom. When you read of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead, you are reading of your own ability to awaken the seemingly lifeless parts of your life through faith. Abdullah opened Neville's eyes to this inner meaning of Scripture, and it transformed not only his understanding of the Bible, but also his ability to apply its truths. What makes Abdullah's approach so powerful is its simplicity. He did not ask Neville to memorize complex rituals or depend on external ceremonies. He taught that everything begins and ends in the imagination. If you can see it inwardly, if you can feel it as real, it must manifest outwardly. This is not wishful thinking. This is not pretending. This is aligning yourself with the creative power of God within you. It is accepting that what you imagine is a seed planted in the subconscious mind, and like all seeds, it must grow and bear fruit. And yet how often do we resist this truth? We cling to the evidence of the senses, we replay old stories of failure, we tell ourselves why it cannot happen. Abdullah would not allow such thinking in his students. He was known to slam the door, literally, on any conversation that entertained doubt. To him, entertaining the opposite state was a form of betrayal. If you are in Barbados, you cannot be in New York. If you are wealthy, you cannot think as though you are poor. If you are healed, you cannot rehearse sickness in your mind. You must occupy the state fully. This might sound harsh, but it is the greatest kindness. Because what Abdullah was really doing was protecting the seed of faith. He knew that doubt is like weeds choking a young plant. If you water your fears with your attention, they will grow stronger. But if you nourish the end state, if you give your full focus to the reality you desire, it must flourish. That is the law. One of the most striking things about Abdullah's life was his refusal to compromise. He did not adjust his teaching to make it more palatable. He did not bend the truth to comfort those who wanted shortcuts. He was unwavering because the law itself is unwavering. You cannot plant one seed and expect another fruit. You cannot dwell in the consciousness of lack and expect abundance. You cannot continually entertain failure and expect success. Abdullah demanded that his students choose and then remain loyal to that choice. This loyalty to the end is perhaps the most challenging part of the journey. It is easy to visualize for a moment, to affirm for a day, to feel the wish fulfilled when circumstances are favorable. But what about when nothing seems to change? What about when the bills are still piling up, when the diagnosis still looms, when the relationship still appears broken? Abdullah would tell you, remain in the end. Do not waver. The outer world is only a reflection of your past states of consciousness. Give it time to rearrange itself. Do not dig up the seed by doubting its growth. Live in the end. The depth of Abdullah's wisdom becomes clear when we realize how it transcends mere manifestation techniques. He was not simply teaching people how to get what they want. He was teaching them to awaken to their true identity as the operant power. He was teaching them to see themselves as God sees them, complete, whole, and already possessing all that they seek. This awakening dissolves the sense of separation that plagues humanity. It reveals that the external world is not against you, but a faithful servant to your inner assumptions. Perhaps this is why Abdullah's name carries such an air of mystery. He was not a man interested in being famous or celebrated. He did not need validation from the world because he understood that the world itself was an outpicturing of consciousness. He did not seek the spotlight, he sought to ignite the light in others, and he succeeded. Through Neville's life and teachings, Abdullah's influence has rippled outward to touch millions, even if they do not know his name. There is something profoundly beautiful about this. Abdullah reminds us that true power does not need to announce itself. It does not need to be adorned with titles or public acclaim. True power is quiet, steady, and sure. It is the power of knowing who you are and what you create. It is the power of living in the end. As we reflect on Abdullah's impact, it is tempting to imagine him as larger than life. And yet, perhaps the most liberating realization is that Abdullah was a human being, just as we are. He was not superhuman, he was simply awake. He understood the law, and he lived by it. And if he could, so can we. That is the legacy he leaves us. Not a figure to idolize, but a standard to rise to. Neville once said that Abdullah taught him more than he could ever repay. And yet, Abdullah would have expected nothing in return. His work was to awaken the divine power sleeping in others. If you are reading these words, that same power is stirring in you. Abdullah's mystery, his uncompromising teaching, his quiet authority, all of it points you back to yourself. It is not about him, it is about you. Will you dare to live in the end? Will you dare to claim the unseen as though it were already yours? Will you dare to stand unmoved by appearances and know that your imagination is the creative power of God? This is the challenge Abdullah presents. This is the invitation that echoes through the years, and it is as alive today as it was when he spoke it to Neville.
To live in the end is to walk a path few are willing to tread, because it requires a radical shift in perspective. You must decide, here and now, that the unseen world of imagination is the real world, and that what you see with your physical eyes is only a shadow, a reflection, a delayed echo. Abdullah knew this with a certainty that shook the very foundations of Neville's mind. He lived as though the imaginal act was already accomplished because, in truth, it was. And he challenged Neville, and now us, to do the same. Think about the story of Barbados again. Imagine the weight of impossibility Neville must have felt as he stood before Abdullah explaining the facts of his situation. No money, no ticket, no visible means of travel. Most teachers would have comforted him, offered to pray for him, perhaps suggested waiting until circumstances improved. But not Abdullah. He declared, "You are in Barbados. You went first class." There was no discussion, no compromise, no room for Neville to dwell in the consciousness of lack. Abdullah forced him to see beyond appearances, to accept the end as a present reality. This is the essence of Abdullah's gift. He did not merely teach Neville how to manifest one desire, he gave him the keys to the kingdom. He taught him that the entire world is consciousness objectified. He taught him that everything begins in the imagination, and that the outer world must conform to the inner state. He taught him to stop looking for evidence and to become the evidence by embodying the fulfilled desire. And in doing so, he unlocked a level of freedom that no external circumstance could ever take away. When we study Abdullah's teachings, we are invited into that same freedom. We are asked to lay down the old habit of waiting for the world to change before we believe. We are asked to stop pleading for things we already possess in imagination. We are asked to awaken from the dream of separation and step boldly into the awareness that our desires are not outside of us. They are within, already accomplished. But how do we do this? In the face of doubt, fear, and persistent appearances. Abdullah would tell you, remain faithful. Do not allow the senses to dictate your inner state. Do not give your power away to circumstances. If you falter, return again and again to the end. Feel it, see it, live there. The more you persist, the more natural it will become, until the outer world simply catches up. This persistence is not a matter of willpower, it is a matter of identity. Who are you? Are you the version of yourself who lacks, who waits, who hopes, but never receives? Or are you the version who already is, who already has, who already lives in the fulfillment of every desire? Choose, and then stay loyal to that choice. This is the loyalty Abdullah demanded of Neville, and it is the loyalty he demands of us. And so, the name Abdullah becomes more than a whisper of history. It becomes a rallying cry. It reminds us that we are not victims of fate. We are creators. We are the operant power. The same law that governed Neville's life governs ours. The same authority Abdullah embodied is available to us now. It does not matter where you are, what you have been through, or what the world tells you is possible. What matters is the state you occupy in consciousness. What matters is the story you tell yourself when no one is listening. What matters is that you dare to live in the end. As you hear these words, something within you knows they are true. You can feel it. That quiet stirring in your heart is the same power that moved through Abdullah, the same power that carried Neville to Barbados.
the same power that shapes galaxies and yet attends to the smallest detail of your life. It is God, your own wonderful human imagination. It is the creative power of the universe expressing itself as you. Abdullah may remain a mystery to the world, but he was never meant to be the center of the story. He was a guide pointing to the source within. He was a reminder that you already possess everything you seek. His life, his teachings, and his uncompromising faith stand as a beacon for all who are willing to awaken. So, ask yourself now, what is the end you dare to live in? What desire burns in your heart, waiting for you to claim it as already done? Close your eyes. See it. Feel it. Step into it as though it were true now, because it is. And as you do, remember the voice of Abdullah echoing across time. You are there now. Do not speak to me as though you are not. This is your invitation to awaken. This is your moment to stop waiting, stop doubting, and stop explaining why it cannot happen. Live in the end. Let the world rearrange itself around your faith. And when it does, and it will, you will understand why Abdullah's name, though rarely spoken, carries the weight of eternity. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If Abdullah's message has awakened something within you, share this with someone you love. It could change their life as much as it can change yours. Subscribe now so you never miss the teachings that remind you of who you really are. And if you'd like to support this channel, there's a link below where you can buy us a coffee and help us keep this work alive. Live in the end. Live in faith and watch the world transform before your very eyes.